So this is Randomization Cubed, a brief overview of a little project of kind of working with R and doing some image manipulation. So this was actually compiled and put together for a golden punch card entry at Superweek, which is a analytics conference that occurs every year outside Budapest, superweek.hu if you want to check that out. And the golden punch card is kind of a fun little competition that occurs on one of the evenings, brief presentations of different projects. Most of them, the ones that are actually contenders, which this was not intended to be a contender, are around analytics things that have been done that are interesting or useful around Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager or somewhere something in the analytics space. This was more kind of just sort of code and fun around that. So was not a winner, was not intended to be really a serious entrant. But these do happen. So this was in 2022, but it was kind of a throwback to 2019 when this gentleman, Eric Dreesen, had an entry to the Golden Punch card where it was a few months after Avicii had died, and he took the lyrics of Avicii, used Python to do sentiment analysis, and then to generate visualizations based on those lyrics. So to me, this project was kind of very similar to what Eric had come at. He'd taken something he was passionate and interested about, kind of applied some of his technical skills, and had a project as a result. So this was a little different in that instead of music, it was about photography, specifically my photography, photos I've taken. Instead of using Python, it used R. And it had a social media component of actually tweeting out kind of every day the result of the project, which was a little addition to it. So I call it randomization cube because there's really 3 levels of randomization. The first is randomly picking a photo to even work on. So I have a SmugMug site that has 350 to 400 pictures on it as of this recording. So pull one picture from that website and then choose how many and in what order to apply some transformations. So it would be between 1 and 5 transformations, using those transformations coming from a couple of different R packages, but choosing which ones and in what order and how many to apply. Another level of randomization. Then with the transformations that were being applied, depending on the transformation, there were different kind of settings or configurations that had to go into the transformation. So randomizing those settings as well. So if you put all this together, we're looking at millions and millions of possible results, which I did not want to look at millions and millions of possible results, especially because most of them would probably not be worth looking at. I really didn't even want to look at thousands and thousands of them. What I wanted to do was look at one a day. So I just wanted to say, with all the millions and millions of possibilities, show me one a day. This project was put together before the whole Wordle craze, but it was very similar to Wordle in that sense, and that it's meant to be just a small thing on a daily cadence. If it did something interesting, or even if it didn't, I wanted to have a record of what it had done. What was the original image? What were the transformations? In what order and with what settings? And what was the final result? So I wanted to have that artifact of a web page to actually document that. And then I wanted to actually tweet out, hey, this was the first image, this was the resulting image, and if you want more details, link back to that web page. So how did I do it? Well, the automation I thought was going to be using some aspect of the Google Cloud platform. I didn't really know what, but along the way, as I was kind of reading and just kind of paying attention to things that were going on, I realized that GitHub Actions might be a better solution, or certainly a workable solution. And it turned out to work great. I'd never used GitHub Actions. This was an opportunity to kind of build a workflow, kind of learn the ins and outs of trying to troubleshoot it and kind of understand the syntax. So it used GitHub Actions, which was great. Then to build the web page, this was R, so I was using Blogdown, I was using Hugo with it, then kind of feeding to GitHub and then plugged into Netlify. So that was kind of, I dabbled with some of this before, but this was putting it together in a way that I never had. I actually wound up replatforming my entire website as part of this, and then making this project just one piece of that replatformed website. But that replatforming all was in this Blogdown, Hugo, GitHub, Netlify world. And then the tweet was simply using the R tweet package, which I had used before, but never to actually tweet. I'd only used it to pull data, but that was pretty straightforward. So I expected going in that some of the results would be kind of dull or maybe flat out hideous. Actually kind of expected that most of the results would be boring or terrible. And I think I fell somewhere in between some and most, but you know, the boring, the uninteresting. Here's an example of an uninteresting one. This was a Pronothary warbler picture that I took kind of on a lake, just 5 minutes from my house. and it ran it through 3 transformations. And frankly, I don't really like what it came up with. It's not particularly even interesting. It's not even so ugly to be interesting. It's just dull. So not a big fan. Sometimes it would make things that are really bad. Like this picture of a rabbit went through 4 transformations. The result, this kind of grayscale mess with a couple of weird accents. Not very interesting. Occasionally, this was a tricolored heron. Picture I took in North Carolina. It went through 4 transformations. Somewhere along the way, it had managed to just completely blow everything out. There was literally nothing left, which really is actually kind of funny, kind of amusing, because this does happen periodically. And that I actually do think is kind of funny, but not anything that I actually want to do anything with. But some of the results actually are interesting, or maybe even aesthetically pleasing. Depends on the eye of the beholder. This was the first one that came out of this process once I started running it that I thought that at least is a little bit interesting. So it was a picture of a sunset on a little bird sanctuary near my house. It was an okay picture taken through a lens ball. The result, it only applied 1 transformation, but it really took the orange and it blew those colors out to kind of this cartoonishly orange, dark orange red, which I thought was kind of interesting. Or this is a picture of a great egret taken on actually the same lake where that pronotherial warbler was taken. Pretty crisp picture of this great egret, a single transformation. To me, it started to turn into what looked almost like a watercolor. And I've seen that a few times, which is kind of interesting, this median transformation, which I'm kind of fascinated with, and what it actually does to pictures. It doesn't quite blur it. If you're looking at it thinking, is it blurring it? Note that there are still some hard edges. Median's pretty cool, and it's pretty easy to understand what it's doing. And I kind of like the result. This is a picture of my wife and one of my sons taken walking down a path in Utah. Kind of a simple perspective sort of picture in the winter. And it went through 4 transformations, and the result is kind of this abstract thing that has almost a sepia tone to it, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then finally, here's one. This is a picture from Western Australia. I really actually like the raw picture, just the color, the beauty of that, the composition. I kind of like the way that the lines turned out in it, but it ran it through. So I like the original picture. It ran it through 4 transformations, and it came out with this kind of green toned, almost pencil sketch, which I really, really liked. Even kind of how it captured the clouds in the sky. I really liked how that turned out. So all of this, because it's being built as a web page, is just part of my website. So there's kind of a link in the global nav that will actually take you to a listing, which is just like search results. It's a list template in Hugo that just shows thumbnails of each picture by day. And so it's easy to kind of scroll through and say, which of these actually look like they'd be interesting. And then I can just click in and get the full web page that has all the detail and a larger image to take a look at. So that just kind of turned out, I think, pretty well. And finally, this is all hosted on a public repo on GitHub. The entire website is a public repo. And then within that, there is a folder that has the code, which is all fairly modularized and I think pretty easy to follow. It's pretty well documented. So that is randomization cubed.